For Black Friday, you can get The Athletic for only £1 a month for a whole year. See the link in the description now to sign up.
Hello, welcome back to Tifo IRL. I'm JJ Bull, and this video is the first of a very short series on who the next permanent Manchester United manager should be. This video is focusing specifically on who Mauricio Pochettino might play in his team, based sort of what happened at Spurs, a little bit on PSG, but mostly because that's what I think. So let's dive straight in. Now, Pochettino is at PSG managing some big superstar names like Lionel Messi and Neymar and Idrissa Gueye. And so he is used to managing big names, so that might help because United's problem for a long while has been players like Sancho, Rashford, Ronaldo, Fernandes all getting to the same, not the same positions, but all playing in the same team and being defensively solid. Now, Pochettino's best Spurs sides were good fun to watch, they pressed a lot, and they attacked in a very narrow shape. So the reason I've got this team up is because what they had up front was Dele Alli played this sort of role, who's a box-to-box second striker almost. So he can drop into midfield and help out when he needs, and can get beyond the striker when he wants, which is exactly what Van de Beek does. But Christian Eriksen was really key to how Spurs played back in the day, and Bruno Fernandes would be that sort of role. So at the moment, it's all based around Bruno Fernandes being in this number 10 slot right here in the middle of the pitch. And you've got Ronaldo up front, whose names come up here. Then on the right, you can play any number of players, but we'll put Mason Greenwood's been there under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And this is roughly what they've played like. And it doesn't work for various reasons, most of all because Greenwood and Rashford or Sancho, whoever plays wide, they leave all this space and the wide areas free. So Fred and McTominay have to do far too much defensively, and opposition teams basically get an overload very quickly. And they can get into these positions and cause them hassle because these two wide forwards stay up in this sort of four that doesn't help defend. Now, Pochettino's teams are all about the team, which is very important in football. And so what you might have, like we were saying, we're basing it off of how Spurs played rather than how PSG play, because the players affect how the system works. Van de Beek could play as his 10 here and do the Dele Alli role, getting in behind and rotating with Ronaldo or Cavani, whoever plays up front. But because the way they build up play, Spurs would often build from the back, and you'd have the fullbacks, who are very important, who are obviously going to get really high and wide. Because although the fullbacks play wide, the rest of the team stays quite narrow. And in build-up, what you'd have is McTominay and Fred might come here, and then Fernandes would drop back as a third midfielder, so you've got extra support and can create different angles and to help with the build-up. What Pochettino's teams always do is have lots of triangles all over the pitch. So you might have Van de Beek falls in here now to form another one with these three here like this. It's a lot of lines now, but I'll get rid of some of them to help you see. So they're looking to create triangles all over the pitch to help with build-up and get the play forward. And Mauricio Pochettino's whole thing is about attacking. That's what he likes to do. And you've seen a lot of the players, when he replaced Tuchel at PSG, said that's the main difference, is that Tuchel's very based on possession. Pochettino is about getting forward. Now, Fernandes on this right-hand side is probably not ideal, but that's what Eriksen did, dropping into these positions here to help him build up, and then coming forward to be a narrow attacking midfielder behind the striker. With Heung-min Son was the boy at Spurs he had here. Eriksen's here obviously drops into these sorts of positions behind the striker now. As they move up the pitch, you effectively get a front two with Ronaldo and Van de Beek. Rashford as Son would be able to move from wide into these striking positions here, because all the things depend on the fullbacks getting high and wide. And this is a big problem Pochettino would have at Man United, because you had Danny Rose back when he was good, that's harsh, and Wan-Bissaka on the right here. Now, Kyle Walker was one of the best fullbacks in the entire Premier League when he was doing this, and Spurs relied heavily on creating this width, because obviously when you play a narrow shape, it's very easy for the opposition defence to get nice and compact and block off your options. And so when they would counter-attack, it relied a lot on the two centre midfielders, who would either be Eric Dier and Moussa Dembele, players like that, who would then cover into the positions that were left spare. So if we push them all up, so it looks more like an actual football team. So you had the two centre-backs here. These two midfielders would look to cover these sorts of spaces behind the fullbacks. A bit like Liverpool's midfield, how they work. So you had Fabinho sitting as the 6, and you have two midfielders either side of him, and they cover these spaces to allow the fullbacks to get so high. But what you have in the midfield is Fred and McTominay, who aren't great defensively. Fred might be able to do more of the kind of bustling box-to-box stuff that Moussa Dembele did back in the day. McTominay's kind of the same. And Another option that you might have with Pochettino that we saw at Spurs is that one of these midfielders often drops behind the centre-backs to form a 3, because he'd often play this 3-4-3 formation. Now, if we put them a little bit back so you can see how that works. So if this is the 4-2-3-1, which Pochettino often relies on, and then you have maybe McTominay as a centre-back, but we've got another video on why that's not the best idea. So let's put Fred in there, or possibly Matic, who can do that. It means they've got the option of transitioning to this back 3, which then means that the fullbacks can, or become wing-backs and can push much higher up the pitch. It also means Fernandes can get closer to someone like Ronaldo, and Rashford will be in here. But then it leaves Van de Beek with McTominay in the midfield, which is another possible option. And sometimes in this shape with Spurs, you'd have Eriksen playing as the centre midfielder. So he's obviously a 10, Eriksen, but he would often play as an 8 when they played a back 3. So you might see this sort of thing in certain games with Man United, especially if they're playing against the front 2. I don't think for 1 minute he's going to play Matic as a central defender, but it means when you get to this sort of position, Matic helps with build-up, and Matic often drops between centre-backs and to the left of a centre-back anyway to help with build-up. And it means when they move forward, suddenly this guy can move into midfield, and then it allows one of the other midfielders to get in and help create overloads. So Pochettino's all about getting the ball forward, attacking, and out of possession, they press relentlessly. Sometimes they fall into a block, and it's more of a kind of 4-4-2. So it would look a bit like this with Ronaldo and Van de Beek maybe. Rashford here, Wan-Bissaka here, Fernandes here. But I'd say your big problems are that although Fernandes presses a lot, he's not the best of defenders. Rashford can get caught out not doing the sort of work you're supposed to do, which again give you the problems with McTominay and Matic trying to cover these wide areas when teams attack them. So what happens normally out of possession is that, say the ball goes to this guy over here, let's do it. They hunt in packs. So Spurs would often press without a clear shape. They would just go with numbers to block off options. And they're sort of working in triangles. So what you'd have is, because it's a 4-2-3-1, what you'd need to have is Rashford would try and push this guy here. Ronaldo would come and try and block the pass back to this guy. Then Van de Beek would come over to make sure that there's no midfielder with an option here. It's all about getting close to them as quickly as you can, so they have to make a decision quickly and pass it, but that lane is blocked because Ronaldo's there, or this ball into here is blocked. Again, it's not a clear shape, it's just about that. And normally the opposition team would have to try and go back to their defender and swap it over, and they just swap the other side. So then Van de Beek comes over here, Ronaldo's over here, and they try and do the same thing to block off options and get tight to them. So this is why often Spurs wouldn't press as high as Pochettino's got a reputation for. They would press namely this sort of middle part of the pitch. And the reason for that is because when a team gets to this sort of part of the pitch, they tend to be slightly more open, leaving space through the middle for opposition team for you to go through them. So what I mean by that is, if you try and press a team high up the pitch, so if you try and start pressing up here, there's less space behind the defence because they tend to be sat back like this, and it's harder to create a chance. But if the team that you're trying to press is already sort of moving up the pitch like this, then what happens is they spread out to give themselves passing options, which means if you are able to force the ball into a wide area, because Spurs defended very narrowly, what would happen is you'd force the play over to one side, they'd get into a bit of trouble, you might be able to win the ball back by surrounding them with a fairly frantic press, and then straight away you can win the ball, turn over, and you've got far more space, it's way more to open up to get into and utilise with quick runners. So imagine you can do that, and then suddenly what you have is players like, well, Ronaldo or Cavani, Fernandes can get forward, Van de Beek can run forward, Rashford can get forward, and they can all utilise this sort of turnover and possession and counter-attack quickly. Everything Pochettino did is to be able to get from back to front as quickly as possible, and a sensible way to do that is to wait slightly later before you engage, before then moving out. And then, I mean, what they also do, utilising the same sort of theory in this narrow shape, is they focus play down one side, everyone sort of bunches together, making sure you've got plenty of triangles. We can draw you some triangles, 2 triangles, but that's what they're trying to do. And then by focusing play here, the opposition naturally has to adapt, and they come over to try and stop this from happening, stop the team at source. But as they're doing that, this guy just gets right up the pitch, and all it takes is for one really clever ball from the top to an offside man who can run in. So if Pochettino were to come in, straight away you'd notice that the weaknesses at Wan-Bissaka, possibly Diego Dalot could come in and play that role instead. He's more of an attacking winger, so that would be an option. You might find that Alex Telles replaces Shaw because he's been out of form recently. Maguire and Varane would likely stay, but Varane, I mean, one of the things they've had this season is Victor Lindelof has actually been quite useful at being able to play long balls from the back over the top. And if they're going to sit back slightly deeper and then try and win the ball at a specific part of the pitch rather than just wherever the players feel like, you might find that Lindelof's very good for that particular reason. And if they were to play a 3, he would be a really useful option for specifically that reason. You could play the 3, you have 2 midfield, Matic and McTominay, or Fred and McTominay, who could support the back 3, work as more defensively minded midfielders, and that gives you a bit more of a balance when you have players like Ronaldo and maybe Greenwood, Rashford, all these sorts of boys up top. Because at the moment it's not very well balanced, and they can't really press high because they haven't been taught how to do it. So Pochettino would have a lot of things to fix. We've not even touched on, for example, Paul Pogba, where he'd go, maybe he's the 10, maybe he's the guy that comes in instead of Van de Beek. Or maybe the forgotten man, where is he? Jesse Lingard, he can come in instead of Van de Beek. There's lots of options that he'd have. He could play several different systems. But have I got too many players on the pitch there? I think I might do. He can't do that if that's what he wants to do. But yeah, this is what Pochettino's team might look like were he to become the manager. Lots of things to fix. Maybe he's the guy.
Deal of the year, I got the deal of the year, I got the deal of the year, I got the deal of the year, it's the deal of the year. You're not gonna wanna miss this one. It's only one month. For a total of 12 months, that's £12 for the year. You wanna get the deal. You don't wanna miss this deal. It's the Athletic and Tifo. You want to get the Athletic for £1 per month for 12 months. You're not going to want to miss that. That's just £12 for the whole year of the Athletic, the best sports writing in the world.